Do we change as we grow older, or do we get more like ourselves?
Ourselves being just like who we were as kids, or
Um,
like that's
okay,
or
let me
like
let
we
me
grow
word it this way.
into what we're supposed to be.
Do we change or do we become more the same?
I think as a whole, I think as a whole, people become more the same. I think it is up to the individual to change themselves based on their climate, based on their environment, what's around them. I mean, it will eventually get to the people eventually get to the point where they're stagnant in that and they don't really change. So in your original statement of like, do we grow into who we are? Like as our what was the question?
As we grow older, do we change or do we
Do
become
we become
more
ourselves?
ourselves? More, yeah.
So I think there's a point where you just become yourself and you don't really change much. Like people get comfortable with what they know. Um,
Right. So I
but
think
I do think it's a good mindset to have.
yeah. I think and this question is kind of complicated even in its accessibility. So I think the difference that it's kind of asking is, let's say, okay, 18-year-old Stimson, let's say 18-year-old Stimson thinks that that poster, that flag, whatever tapestry behind you is stupid. But you now realizes that it's awesome. Now,
Hmm.
did you change or did you become more true to yourself and realize that the reasons you didn't like it weren't that you inherently didn't like it, if that makes sense?
Um, I
Was
changed.
the poster
Like,
inside, was
because
the tapestry inside you all along, or did you become the tapestry?
see, I became the tapestry, and I can even equate this to something you were very close on. Like when I was in when I was in high school, I was so vehemently against marijuana use and like people using marijuana. I thought people that smoked pot were scumbags.
But well, hold on.
Scumbags.
But if we can go one step deeper, why did you think that was?
It was just because of how I was raised, where I was raised. You know what I mean? Like the kind of attitudes that the people. I went to a school and the dingweeds with 100 people in my class.
Okay, I didn't maybe ask that question the right way. So what changed? I think what changed was your opinion on weed, right? Your
Yeah.
your your perception of what kind of people. I don't think it was the weed you disliked. It was the kind of people you thought smoked weed, correct?
Well, I see. That's I think I. It was no. It was my perception of the weed because that's I because I knew kids in high school that were like, they were great athletes and stuff like that. And then they started smoking and then they just fell off the map. They could have had all these chances in life and
Mm-hmm.
and they lost it. And I was like, well, that's a direct correlation to the marijuana. And
Good.
not knowing any better, I mean, they were going through psychological issues, trauma, whatever else. The marijuana use was just a side part of that. And like, I'm not advocating for marijuana use as a teen. I mean, I don't think that's good for a developing brain.
No, 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 no.
I
I
could
would
see
agree with you
why
there.
they would turn to that. You know what I mean? And me now, I mean, it's such a better alternative to something like drinking alcohol that I would obviously I do not think this. I'm a completely I'm on the complete other side of the road on this one.
Okay, let me. I like that, but I'm gonna kind of play the devil's advocate to it and say it this way. It wasn't the you didn't change your mind. What your mind was made up on was that you didn't like people having their like losing their potential or something in that general area. Would you say that's a correct assessment? You didn't like the effect that you thought weed put on people,
Yeah.
and you still don't like the effect. You just realize that weed is not the corollary aspect. So in that aspect, I think I you would argue that you didn't change. You learned something new, but in its core principle, you still feel the same way about the same base idea. It's kind of the dressing over top may have changed, but I think in that aspect, you became more truer to your core beliefs of what you do and don't like, if you will. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes and no. If you've ever seen anything Hamilton Morris has ever done, the chemist, he's on a
Okay.
lot of Vice stuff. He's been on Joe Rogan a few times. If
Okay.
anybody listening or watching, if you ever get a chance to see anything Hamilton Morris has done, I highly recommend it.
Can you say the name one more time? Hamilton Morris.
Yep, Hamilton Morris.
Okay.
He's a chemist, and he said this numerous times, and he lives by it. It's not it's not, a chemical is just a chemical. It's how you apply it that makes all the difference. So like, if you're going to choose to use a certain drug, I mean, don't demonize the chemical behind it. It's just it's a part of nature. It is a constant in our reality.
Good.
It's just kind of what, like, you can't demonize anything based on its like base structure. Like, it's how you use it. You know what I mean? And
Okay.
that's something I had to learn, and I learned from him. And I think that's a good way to look at any type of substance, drug use, whatever. You know what I mean? It's not the drug, it's how people choose to use it.
But in the way that I put that, do you see now how someone could argue that you didn't change and then you actually became more like yourself? Given the way that I stated it, and of course, like I said, I was
Yeah.
playing the devil's advocate, but
Yes. Yeah, I can.
so I mean, even inside oneself, you can have this is one of those debates you can have within yourself, which are some of my favorite debates to have because I like good conversation.
Well, it's like I
So,
said at the beginning, introspective thought is so important. Like, you need to constantly challenge your beliefs. You know what I
maybe
mean?
you'll have a little extra thought on, am I changing or am I really just, am I going outward or inward? And neither is right or wrong, but some people believe they need to find that center in themselves and then everything else. But then other people might feel like they need to grow. I think it depends on what kind of narrative is most beneficial for the person. If
Well,
you
this
feel
is, I mean, this is
you feel like
also
you want
the
to
same
grow and
thing
add new stuff for
too.
yourself, then kind of thinking about that way might be conducive to that. But if you want to more find yourself, I don't know. I think there's a kind of a placebo aspect where you kind of want to think in a certain way just for the sake of efficiency, even if it's not what you truly believe, which is
Right.
self placebo is a whole nother deep conversation that we can have on another time.
And to build on that, that's more like because you're saying basically everybody has like a set of a set of morals that they live by, like a
Well, I
code.
think I think that is the base of the question is there a
Exactly.
you pre-built that you have to find, or are you just a blank canvas that needs to be created?
You're a blank canvas, in my opinion, because I mean, think about religions.
Okay.
Each religion has different aspects to it, and you, I mean, the majority of people's morals are gathered from all different kinds of sources. You know what I mean? Unless you're like a super strict Christian or Muslim, you know what I mean? Your moral codes are what are their moral codes are.
Okay. All
But
right.
like,
So let me say it that is. Once you have your
pick and
what we'll
choose.
say is your foundation, if you will. Once you have a your foundation set, does that foundation ever change, or are you just building on top of it? Do you understand what I'm
I think there's a point where you have it set, and then you just deviate from that based on what you find to be like necessary. So like, you'll have experiences that end up changing that. And it's like, okay, well, I'm willing to deviate from my set of morals for this reason or another.
But if you're willing to deviate for that set reason, then maybe the moral code that you have wasn't exactly honest with what the moral was, if that makes sense.
It does. I
And I
tend to
mean
find
exactly what we were talking about
sometimes
with the
sets of
weed
morals
discussion.
that are like easily definable. There's flaws within that. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
People are so different that you're going to find different ways to come to the similar conclusions.
Okay.